Welcome back to episode 6 of Chambers Chatter. I'm Laura Chambers Babelis.
And I'm Shay Chambers Helms. Today we are so excited to welcome Edward Allen to the show. Welcome, Ed.
Hi. Thanks for asking me to be here.
Absolutely. So we're gonna take you back. We're gonna start at the childhood and kind of tell us about growing up in Beaufort as a child.
Okay. I often say I was born, reared, and dragged up in Beaufort. I was raised by my grandparents. My grandfather was Willie Pigler, who was the only veterinarian here in Beaufort until Dr. Pratt came in.
Wow.
Daddy, as I call him, because he raised me. Ironically, he attended Mathis School. His tuition then was to take care of the animals, which stemmed his interest in becoming a veterinarian, self-educated. He was here until Dr. Pratt came to Beaufort. The other strange thing is his last name is Pigler, P-I-G-L-E-R. Not only was he a veterinarian, but where we live now on Ladies Island is what remains of his farm. He was a hog farmer. As you go down Sea Island Parkway, you'll see our driveway, Pigler Cove. Most of Beaufort High's campus was part of my grandfather's farm.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So when I graduated from Robert Smalls in 1967, when Robert Smalls was still a high school, I knew in life two things I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be a veterinarian, and I didn't want to be a hog farmer. Having get up in the middle of the night, holding animals for him to work on, and also on Sunday morning when we should be going to church, that's when the hogs decided they wanted to get out.
Oh gosh.
Of course.
So those desires were not my desire. Beaufort was a small town, as we look at it now being what we consider larger. Mm-hmm. But Beaufort has a unique thing about it. Everybody knew everyone. And as we look back over how Beaufort was when it was a small town, families knew families. My grandfather had a contract with U.S. Postal Service, carrying the mail from the post office when it was on Bay Street, on Carteret Street, to Paris Island Naval Hospital. Before I was old enough to drive, some mornings I carried the mail when either he was tied up with somebody's animal or something else came up. He took care of animals on Paris Island as well as many of the plantations around here, including Brays Island. He had a love for animals and for hunting, so he also leased tracts of land out in Burton, specifically where Shanklin School was and where the County Public Works Department, Roads and Bridges, is that now. I remember as a child him renting that, and he had what he called bird gardens for quails. Mm-hmm. Some of his clients were the Guggenheims, the Firestones, as well as the Goodyears when he came here during the winter to hunt. So we, got exposed to several folks not from the area, but came down here to enjoy what we have. I am the oldest of 3 children. My mother and father divorced before I was 2, and like I said, I was raised by my grandfather. Beaufort, the unique thing about it is the relationships that exist between families. I was born at 1508 Washington Street because at that time blacks were not admitted to Beaufort Memorial.
Wow.
I was delivered at home by a black physician, Dr. Kennedy. And when I think of that, My son, who's now a deputy sheriff with the sheriff's department, you hear people say that I brought you into this world and I'll take you out. Well, I delivered my son.
Oh my gosh.
So I could, and at that time, I was director of EMS for Beaufort County, the first black EMS director in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida.
Oh my gosh.
My wife and I went through Lamar's, and at the last moment, dear friend of mine, Dr. Elijah Watts, says, Ed, I'm going to be here. You go ahead. You take care of things. I will not dare say what she said at the time that she looked over and saw him and not me at her head. So we took that. I was born breech. My son was born breech.
Oh
my
gosh.
Told Dr. Washington, so I never delivered a breech before. I had delivered some other births in the field, but fortunately all those were natural. I said graduate from Robert Smalls. At Robert Smalls, we got exposed to a whole lot of things that other black school students did not get, and that was the results of the instructors that we had at Beaufort, here at Robert Smalls, and also the exposure we had when we look at W. Kent Austin and the celebrities that he brought into Beaufort, both in sports as well as lecturers and also actors, singers. It gave us a great deal of exposure.
Yeah.
He was a pusher of making sure that students got exposed to as much as they could. We look at now Robert Smalls at that time was outside of the city limits of Beaufort. It was later, the city limits were later extended. My grandmother attended the colored school in Beaufort. Ironically, on the other end of the city limits is where USCB is now. This is where she went to school. There, I found out later in life that the school that she attended was later given to the white, and Robert Smalls was built on the Ribault Road and Boundary Street, because it initially it was outside, like I said, outside the city limits. And I had the pleasure of attending school in all three of the buildings, the last of which just recently was toned down, Robert Smalls Elementary School, where my mother taught. I look at what I wanted to do in life. I worked at Luther's Pharmacy when it was a pharmacy from the 7th through the 12th grade. My brother later worked there when I graduated.
What was your job there?
A little bit of everything.
Okay.
Delivering medications. I learned how to fill simple compounding prescriptions. I daily got the mail from the post office, delivered packages out, attended all the normal stocking and all that was there.
And you were doing compounding as a high schooler.
Yes. Uh-huh.
That is wild.
And that's what, it made me want to look at going into pharmacy. Jewel Long and Albert Overtree was the pharmacist, and later Dr. Keith came in. I attended Xavier of Louisiana, which had a school of pharmacy there. And as I said, my freshman and sophomore year, I was a pharmacy major.
Mm-hmm.
And as I looked around, I didn't see any privately owned drugstores in Beaufort. I mean, correction, in New Orleans. So I think, well, the day of the private owned drugstores on the way out. So my other job in high school was at Field Homes, ran ambulance service, and I worked at Wright Donaldson, uh, you know, driving ambulance on calls when he would call me in. We had a combination, the hearse ambulance. So when you was at a funeral, you took the red light off, the floorboards flipped over, and the stretchers was moved out, and now you had the rolls in the floor for the caskets.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
that led me into looking at mortuary science. So I went into that field.
What was the science called?
Mortuary science.
Okay.
Common old funeral directors and embalmers. And I looked at Xavier, was a Catholic university for black students. It was one of the major producers of pharmacists and also pre-med students in the United States. Ironically, when I transferred to from Xavier to Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, Cincinnati is the oldest embalming school in the nation, and ironically was always integrated. And I looked around, I found out that Carl Anderson with Anderson Funeral Home graduated from Cincinnati. Kurt Copeland, Copeland Funeral Home, graduated from there. So I had, not knowing at the time that I entered, that I had Beaufort ties
Yeah.
to that. You
Really
know,
cool.
when we look at Beaufort in past history, Beaufort did not have, especially at the beginning, integration, did not have the problems that occurred in other communities. The first formal school for freed slaves was here in Beaufort County on St. Helena Island. Mather School was a school for girls here in Beaufort. And then we come into modern times, we look at Israel Brooks, the first black highway patrolman, was assigned initially here to Beaufort. There are many people that think I was the first black coroner for Beaufort County. I'm the second. The first black coroner for Beaufort County was a gentleman, Renty Grays, from Hilton Head. Many of you may know Thomas Bonwell. That was, I think, Thomas Bonwell's great-grandfather.
Okay.
So there are a lot of doors that have been opened here in Beaufort. We did not have many of the problems, and that's why the assignment was made for Israel to come to Beaufort to break the color barrier.
Mm-hmm.
We look at communities that I go around Beaufort now and look at, as I said, I was born on Washington Street, I was the 1500 block, the 1400 block. One side of the street was white, the other side of the street was black. We go over to Duke Street, in like manner, the 1500 block and the 1400 block of Duke Street had white and black families. So we were accustomed to dealing interracially with our community. Many of the students that went to Beaufort High, their families had black employees in the residence. So when they got home, they came back home to a black employee that took care of them after after school. The influx of the educational system, when we look at the educational system in the United States, it's built on the premise and some of the philosophies of Robert Smalls, a slave here in Beaufort that went on and was active in military, in state and national government. A slave who took care later of his master's wife, who we would consider now, and looking back, she probably was coming down with dementia when he bought the house that he was enslaved in on tax sale.
Oh.
And she thought that was still her house, and he permitted her to live there until she died. And Mrs. McKee, thinking the whole time that was still her house. My grandfather was involved in civil rights, and I met many of the people involved in the civil rights movement as a result of my grandfather. I even had, I guess we'd say, the unique, odd experience of attending a Ku Klux Klan rally because of my grandfather wanting to see who was in attendance at that meeting down, and it was at the intersection of Brickyard Point Road and Sam's Point Road.
Wow. What was that like?
Well, I was scared. It started, me and some friends was at what is now the Lynn Brown Center, the Green Street gym, basketball court there. We're out playing ball, and here come these guys coming down the street and driving through. I guess they got lost, and instead they came and turned onto Green Street, and we all stopped and followed them, trying to figure what's heck going on,
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite an experience.
How old were you?
At that time, I was probably about 11.
Wow, you were really young.
Yeah, so, but it's good where I live on Ladies Island now, right across the roads where my grandfather had a liquor store, a nightclub, and a shrimp hole. The shrimp hole was run by a white gentleman, Smith, and my grandfather had the liquor store in there. But my grandfather's uncle, prior to the building of the bridge to Ladies Island, and I'm not thinking of the Woods Memorial Bridge, but the old bridge that was wood with asphalt on it. As you cross the Woods Bridge and you look now at where Whitehall is, you can still see where the bridge began there. And as a child living here, you didn't have air conditioning at that time, but you could hear vehicles going across the bridge in the middle of the night as the boats clattered between the bridge there, and this was the beginning, I guess we could say, of what is now the Henry Chambers Park. As a child, remembering that when shrimp boats were there, it was all level. And right at the end of Luther's and Wallace and Danner, Stowe was a seawall. The Breeze Theater on pylons. On low tide, you could walk under the Breeze Theater if you dared, because the theater was built out on pylons, which is now the Paninis.
Yeah.
We want to take a quick break to thank our sponsor, Watkins Mechanical.
Hey y'all, it's Josh with Watkins Mechanical. Warm weather is finally here and your system is working hard to keep you cool. Here are 3 quick tips to help. 1. Replace your air filters monthly. Restrictions cause your system to work harder and reduce your air quality. 2. Keep your outdoor unit clean. Remove any leaves, debris, or dirt for proper airflow. 3. Set your thermostat at a constant temperature. Programmable thermostats improve efficiency and help save you money. For quality service and lasting results, call Watkins Mechanical, trusted in the Low Country for over 25 years. Brian, whatever it takes.
Fox Jewelers, that was next to Luther's Pharmacy. Mr. Fox had a little dock there that he parked his car out on, and all. So you look at the changes that have occurred and look at some of the old pictures of Beaufort. As I go along, I remember what it was and what's there now. And here we are going at a park that was in the marsh, in the river.
It's so hard to believe, isn't it?
It is, looking, it's come a long way. But the interesting thing is thinking of both white and blacks, how they got along in Beaufort, and looking at it now. As we walk along the street, we can generally tell the people that are originally from Beaufort or the ones that have recently moved here. Is the Gullah people say the Kumyas and the Binyas. Well, the Binyas, you speak to them as, how are you doing? Good morning, good afternoon. And you get a return. The folks that have come here, you speak to them, they look at you as, well, what does he want? What is this up to? Because they are from a community where folks did not speak to each other. I spoke to a gentleman that told me he met my wife and I at the waterfront park, and he decided, as he was looking for someplace to live, he decided to move to Beaufort as a result of speaking to us, because we took time, told him a little bit of history about Beaufort, and welcomed him to the area. And then he said on those bases is what he made the decision. This is where he wanted to come and raise his children.
I think a lot of people, that's why they fall in love with Beaufort, is because the community is...
chills everywhere. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
But we are fortunate. As time goes along, time brings about changes. And some of it's good, some of it's not so good. But, we take it in strive. And because we are part of the community, we work to improve and maintain the quality of life that we have. Unfortunately, I often say that present day time, if you wanting to bring your children back home, unless they're in the hospitality, medicine, or work for the government, there's nothing here for them. So we educate our children, both white and black, and as a result, I did take their education and their interest and they go somewhere else.
Right.
So we lose in that respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What other great big changes have you seen through Beaufort over the years, especially maybe from the lens of your career?
Well, I can go and make one comparison, is that of EMS. I got into EMS as a result of Thomas Bonwell telling me there was a course being offered at the technical college, and I needed to take some of my men and go down there to it. I was director of transportation for Beaufort, Jasper, now Beaufort Jasper, Hampton Comprehensive Health Service, and we had an ambulance within that. South Carolina was doing a pilot project for the U.S. Department of Transportation, and most people would say, do you think that EMS came out of healthcare? It came out of transportation. There were two classes being offered, one in a rural setting, which was in Columbia. I mean, in a rural setting, which was here in Beaufort at Technical College, and one in an urban setting, which was in Columbia. took that course. It was free at the time, and a free education ended up being a career for me. The funeral directors were operating ambulance service. If you were in a wreck or you got sick, you called the funeral home. If you didn't, throw the person in the car and take to the hospital. Ironic is that you look at the 10 signals what law enforcement used, and there were 2 10 signals. 1052 was ambulance white. 1053 was ambulance black.
Wow.
And this was changing, and that was in 1968 was a 10 signals. I took that basic course along with Asa Godowns, who ended up being my assistant director for Beaufort County EMS, Carl Anderson, Kurt Copeland, Martin Sauls, Martin's wife, his father, Ransom Stinney from Yamasee, and also looking at other field directors. I was fortunate enough to be selected as an instructor, took the instructor training and taught basic EMS, ENT at Technical College. Wow. Something that was a free education ended up being a career.
Wow.
Try and tell children now, education is important. We look at what we can get for a free education, and if you apply it in life, what it can become.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Drove school bus. Yeah, back in the day, $35. That's what you got paid for driving the school bus.
How old were you when you were driving the school bus? Were you in school at the time?
I was. That was my junior year in high school.
So as a high schooler, you were driving other high schoolers to
Right.
school.
That is something so unfathomable to us, the amount of trust in kids those days.
I look at it when they went to adult drivers and said kids don't know how lucky they are. Some of those chances we took driving the school bus and putting people's life in danger, but
Did you have to get a special license at all?
yeah, you got certification as a school bus driver.
At least they had you do that.
Yeah.
And so $35, was that for the month, for the whole school year?
That was $35 for the entire month. And some other perks that came along with it that I think the majority of the drivers, at least the male drivers, took of slicing a little bit of gas out for their cars. Yeah. So we look at that, and I think there was a magistrate, Judge Smith. At one time, he had all the drivers, the majority of drivers from Roberts Falls at least, down for either turning up the governor on the bus so you could get a little more speed, and also those guys that were mechanics even went so far as to remove the governor to get most speed out of us. So.
Oh my gosh, that is hysterical.
Yeah. But and the thing about it is, if you got 5 gallons tonight, you're gonna have to get 5 gallons next time they fuel the bus up. Why is it using more gas and you got the same
same
route?
route. Yeah.
So.
That's too funny.
But as opposed to now that they have to have a CDL license to drive bus. But you look, those as students, we had the responsibility to pick up those kids, get them to school, and get them back home safely.
That's so crazy. That was the responsibility.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I recently read an article from the Island Packet that back during Hurricane Matthew, I believe, we had some caskets that floated to Hilton Head. Can you tell us about that?
Well, not only Hilton Head, we had caskets that floated up from graves all over Beaufort County, from St. Helens Island to Hilton Head. As you look at, especially black cemeteries in Beaufort County and many other communities in the South, the cemeteries are on river's edge. Okay, one thing is that prior to air conditioning, nobody wanted to live on the river's edge, because of mosquitoes, etc. The caskets that floated up with the influx of caskets in vaults being watertight, air sealed, as the high tide that we had. Many of those caskets were fresh graves, and they were cemeteries, as I said, was on the banks of rivers or creeks. Concept by many blacks is that, especially the elderly black, is that as a person died, the cemetery is on the water's edge, so that as the body would be able to, the spirit would be able to return to the motherland, Africa. Graves are buried east and west. Concept, with the exception of the National Cemetery, Arlington, and Hawaii, cemeteries are in a east-west direction, with the head of the grave being to the west, foot of the grave being to the east. That on Resurrection Day, if a person were to sit up in their grave, they would be faced in the east and the rising sun.
I did not know that.
Oh, wow.
Now, the exceptions, National Cemetery, Beaufort is a semicircle, Hawaii is a semicircle, Arlington is a complete circle. Did not know that until I was studying for my National Registry boards for my field records and embalmer's license. So the National Cemeteries, for the ones I mentioned, Arlington, Hawaii, and Beaufort, those are either half circles in the old part, the new part of the cemetery at Beaufort's not that. So that if you are at the head of the grave and look across the foot, you're in perfect alignment with the base of the flagpole.
Really?
Right.
Wow.
So one of the things I did when I was coroner was trying to encouraging field homes. The vault is a burial vault. It's intended to be buried, not surface mounted. And we had problems here, Charleston County, many of the coastal counties had problems at that. And this has occurred in some inland counties also because of rise of water. It's the equivalent of having a mason jar. It's airtight. So the buoyancy is going to cause it to come up out of the grave. One particular body was a recent gentleman that passed. His casket came up and the vault out of the ground. And he floated out on outgoing tide, floated out into the river, and he was less than a quarter of a mile from his home.
Oh.
What are the chances
Oh my goodness.
of that? And I knew that gentleman, and I told the guys I had to go out. I always said I wanted to go on a airboat. These kids found him, and I had to go out on the airboat with the water rescue. We went up onto the marsh, picked up his casket, carried it back to land, and I carried it into the coroner's office. Told the guys, I said, look, I think I know who this person is, but I'm going to need to open the casket to see. And you could just see everybody at that landing. You going to do what? And they fled,
Yeah.
so.
Wow.
Wow. Well, as we kind of wrap this up, is there anything you would give to advice to younger kids or to the next generation of Beaufort to kind of maintain what you've so strongly conveyed is the family and the connections that we make?
One of my philosophies of life is you have to give back to the community that gave to you. And as young people, we look now as the youngest that are not getting involved in government, not getting involved in volunteering. Even as you look at our colleges and sororities, of the decrease in the number of students that elect to, pledge for a college or sorority, and doing it with the concept of being able to serve, to, wherever you decide to call home, you need to invest into that. You also need, as adults, to get involved in setting good examples for students. A former law enforcement officer, he's deceased now, but he came one day coming from school, and he was throwing at my grandfather's horse. And Daddy told him, "Look, son, don't throw at my horse." Came home from school, and the very next day he didn't see my grandfather, so he threw at the horse. My grandfather caught him and tanned his butt, sent him home. That kid was white. My grandfather obviously is black. He went and told his father that this colored man, as we were called then, spanked him. Knowing my grandfather, he got more than a spanking. But his father asked, "What did you do? Why did he do that?" He said, "Well, I was throwing at his horse." And he says, "You were throwing at Tommy?" That's the horse's name. But everybody knew Tommy. And he says, "Did Willie tell you about that?" He said, "Yeah, he told me not to throw it, but I didn't see him, so I came by the next day and threw it." He said, "Well, what do you expect me to do about that?" And I guess he couldn't believe in that day and time that his father didn't go and correct my grandfather, but his father knew my grandfather's reputation and his involvement. And that gentleman advised my wife to sit down, and he was going to talk to her and let her know what type of family he was getting involved in. But we have to give guidance and direction to our children. And that is one thing that is not occurring now. We have disrespect, lawlessness, etc. And it's not because parents are not getting involved in the child's life and giving them guidance.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. This was incredible. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thanks for being here. We really appreciate
Special,
it.
amazing part of history that you were able to share. Thank you.